The great wisdom traditions generally refer to these two types of consciousness as absolute and relative, or enlightened and ignorant, or awakened and asleep, or what we often just call big mind and small ego. The Tibetans call them the great perfection and the grasping self. Both of these types of consciousness exist, and it's important for individuals to have both of them fully present in their lives. But the difference is important, and it's rarely understood. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes on this important distinction and show how it directly applies in your own life. Ultimate consciousness is the consciousness that's directly realized when you have an authentic experience of something like enlightenment, also known as awakening, satori, metamorphosis, moksha, the great liberation. This ultimate consciousness is said to be directly one with absolute spirit itself, what the Sufis call the supreme identity. It's the state of the unio mystica made famous by the mystics around the world for the last 2 or 3 millennia. People with this realization or experience feel that they're no longer just their separate self sense, the ego or the small self, and feel instead that they're one with the ground of all being, and therefore one with the entire universe itself. This is often called ultimate unity consciousness or awakened non-dual awareness, and it indeed is the ever-present goal of the great mystical traditions around the world. It's also central to any sort of integral theory that wants to be fully comprehensive and inclusive when it comes to the further reaches of human potential. This deep realization or enlightenment is said to be the summum bonum, the greatest good that a human being can ever possess. The key characteristic of this ultimate consciousness is a radical, ultimate, absolute, all-inclusiveness. There's simply nothing, not a single thing, no matter how conventionally bad or nasty or even evil, nothing is excluded from a complete embrace by this supreme identity. So purpose here takes on a radically different meaning. And in some ways, you could even say that purpose becomes meaninglessness. The reason is because the supreme identity or great perfection is radically all-inclusive, there's literally nothing that it lacks. And therefore, it is already absolutely perfect in every way. The great perfection. Purpose means that you want to get from now, which is lacking something, to a future which has found that missing something. And the drive to get that missing something is purpose. But the ultimate, the absolute, has nothing lacking, nothing missing. If it were lacking anything, it would not be infinite perfection. When you are in a state of ultimate unity consciousness, you are literally one with everything. There is nothing that is outside you. And therefore, desire as such simply ceases to exist as any sort of agitated drive or need. And purpose likewise tends to evaporate, because at this deepest level of reality, you are already one with absolutely everything that arises or that will arise. it's an everything mind. Purpose, in the conventional sense anyway, simply melts away, along with time, tension, and terror. This is why enlightenment is known as the great liberation. Now, sometimes you will hear this state of infinite oneness referred to with terms like love. But this is big love, capital L love. It's the love that moves the sun and other stars. And there's nothing that this big love doesn't love. So when you're one with everything that is arising, you will indeed feel that you love absolutely everything that exists. But this everything really means everything. Again, radically and absolutely all inclusive. So in this state of oneness, where I do not see the mountain, I am the mountain, and I do not feel the earth, I am the earth, and I do not watch the clouds, I am the clouds. And in that state, I do indeed love the mountain, and I love the earth, and I love those clouds. But in the same awareness, I love global warming, I love toxic pollution, and I love terrorist attacks. I love murder, and I love crime, and I love deadly accidents. I love my own faults, and I love the evil in you, and I love hatred wherever I see it. All inclusive means all inclusive. And therefore, this type of ultimate, unconditional, infinite, and all inclusive love is a love that most people usually have not experienced and know little about. You can call it love, but it's clearly quite different from everyday love, which loves this and doesn't love that, and definitely excludes many things. This infinite love gives rise to the entire manifest universe, not out of lack or something missing, but out of radical superabundance and outrageous overflowing, moment to moment to moment. So this love is there, and any purpose that it has is there, but the radically all-inclusive nature of them makes them completely different from any love and purpose found in the conventional everyday world. And it's in that conventional everyday world that the other type of consciousness, and therefore the other type of purpose, can be found. Because in the manifest relative realm, everything is lacking something, and purpose is the way that those missing holes are filled. And the satisfaction of that purpose is what gives relative meaning to the relative or small self. This is where most people spend most of their time. And it's in this relative realm that most forms of self-improvement, self-growth, and self-fulfillment occur. This is the whole realm of manifestation, the realm of Maya. Maya is usually translated as illusion, but all it really means is that any manifest realm that is seen apart from spirit or apart from the great perfection is illusory. It's a dream, a bubble, smoke and fog. And its reality is seen only when it is seen as a direct manifestation of spirit itself. So this entire realm of conventional reality and relative purpose is actually the way that spirit itself is manifesting. The entire manifest realm is said to be not two or non-dual with ultimate spirit. And that realization is what constitutes enlightenment. So purpose in the relative realm is indeed relatively real. It's how items in this conventional manifest universe grow, evolve, and complete themselves. In this relative realm, all things are unfulfilled. And therefore, in this relative realm, all things have purpose as they attempt to grow and evolve into their own highest potentials. And this applies to the relative, finite, manifest aspect of human beings as well. We humans have multiple intelligences, including cognitive intelligence, emotional intelligence, aesthetic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, moral intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. And each of those multiple lines of development grow and evolve through around a half dozen major levels of development. The purpose or goal of each of those stages of development is to fulfill the potential of its stage and then transform to the next higher stage. The ultimate motivation for this is the superabundant overflowing of the great perfection itself, which spontaneously manifests in the world as the inherent drive to greater wholeness and inclusiveness, a drive many philosophers call eros. This is ultimate purposelessness manifesting as relative purpose. The only way you can get the infinite with its radical and ultimate great perfection to manifest in this relative, limited, finite world is to have each finite thing agitate to become infinite, to become more unified and more whole, to be one with spirit itself, to return to its own source and ground. And thus each and everything in manifestation is actually part of a larger developmental or evolutionary sequence, where each stage in that developmental sequence is more inclusive, more whole, more united, more complex, and more conscious. The simple sequence from quarks to atoms to molecules to cells to organisms to self-aware organisms is an obvious example. Each one of those stages transcends and includes its predecessor. Cells transcend and include molecules, which transcend and include atoms, which transcend and include quarks, and so on. In other words, the whole of one stage becomes a part of the whole of the next stage. A whole molecule is part of a whole cell is part of a whole organism, and so on. What Arthur Koestler called a holon, a whole that is part of a larger whole. The entire manifest universe is composed of holons, which is a reflection in the relative realm of the ultimate wholeness of the infinite itself. And the drive in the relative finite realm of each one of these holons is to become closer to the ultimate wholeness of radical spirit itself. So one purpose that you, as a human being, possess is an ultimate purpose or infinite love, where in your own deepest self, you perfectly embrace and include a oneness with every single thing and event that is arising. Again, you don't see the mountain, you are the mountain. You don't watch the clouds, You are the clouds. You don't feel the earth. You are the earth. And in that ultimate unity consciousness, you love with an infinite and radically unconditional love every single thing and event that exists, no exceptions. This is a completely choiceless love, a purposeless purpose, your ultimate ground of being and great perfection. And within that field of love, your own personal relative self has its own needs and drives and goals. Even if you realize your own great perfection, you still want your relative being, your finite body and mind and conventional self, to realize its own greatest relative wholeness. So in that dimension of your being, you will have various actions driven by purpose. As a relative whole-on, there are only two major things that you can do, and hopefully you'll do both of them. You can be a fully transparent manifestation of the great perfection itself, or you can fulfill the evolutionary drive of the relative whole-on itself to find its own greatest wholeness, unity, and consciousness. So those are the two major drives or purposes that you as a human whole-on have. One, to awaken to your own ultimate ground of being, your own great perfection and big mind, driven by a choiceless awareness of all-inclusive love. And two, fulfill your own relative existence by moving through all of its own growth and development and evolution. In other words, to wake up and to grow up. To wake up to the ultimate realm and to grow up in the relative realm. And this applies not just to yourself, but to every sentient being in the manifest world. As part of your relative purpose in the finite realm, and driven by the purposeless, choiceless, superabundant love of the infinite realm, you want to look around the world and decide from an integral awareness, including both relative and absolute perspectives, what aspects of the world need most attention. Even if you have directly realized your own great perfection, there are still areas of the relative realm that have not realized this enlightened condition. And there are certainly areas of the relative realm that have not been able to live up to their own relatively greatest potentials. And therefore, as a type of bodhisattva vow, you vow to help all beings both wake up and grow up. It's no longer enough to help all beings only wake up, because if a sentient whole-on has not realized its own highest, most unified, most whole stage of being in the relative realm, that is, if it is still at a significantly lower stage in its own growing up, then it will interpret its waking up in the terms of those limited growing up stages. Right now, around the world, by far, the great majority of those who have had a major waking up realization have not yet developed to their own highest growing up level. They're therefore interpreting all of their experiences, including spiritual experiences of waking up, in terms that are limited, broken, partial, and fragmented, reflecting those lower stages of growing up. This is a profound catastrophe facing all of the paths of the great liberation, and not one of them is yet aware of this. So these are the two major types of purpose or goal or aim that you as a human being have available to you. One, a purposeless purpose, a choiceless awareness, an absolutely all-inclusive and unconditional love, that of the great perfection. And two, the purposes, goals, and aims that reflect your own individual, finite being in this relative, everyday world as you reach out and act to fulfill your own highest potentials in the relative world and find the greatest amount of wholeness and unity that you can in this manifest world. In other words, to fully wake up and to genuinely grow up. It's like having a dream at night where you see hundreds of people starving to death. And naturally, you find this very disturbing. So what can you do about these starving people? One approach is that you can go through the dream yourself and try to feed them all. It's a slow process, but it's better than nothing. The other way to end their hunger is to simply wake up. As it turns out, we are in a world where paradoxically, both of those are required. In our own individual cases, as well as in the cases of helping others, we need to both wake up to an ultimate reality and grow up in a relative reality. And that growing up includes evolution and development in virtually all human areas, economically, technologically, educationally, environmentally, politically. Fortunately, today, for the first time in all of our history, we now know a great deal about both of those pathways. We have access to genuine ways of helping people wake up, as well as help them fully grow up. And because we know this, nothing less than both of those is truly satisfactory. As it is now, people who are helping human beings improve themselves are teaching them either how to grow up in some line or wake up in some state. But absolutely nobody is doing both of those, not by taking advantage of all that we know about them both. So the ideal for a human being today is to ground themselves in both of these two types of purpose: an ultimate purposeless purpose or choiceless awareness radiating infinite, all-inclusive love, and a relative series of conventional manifest purposes, goals, and drives, aiming to fulfill our manifest potentials in as many realms as we pragmatically can. And ideally, we want to include both of those so that our every action stems from the unity or non-duality of a spontaneous overflowing of infinite great perfection and a very deliberate, goal-oriented, manifest drive and purpose to fulfill our own greatest relative potentials. And we want to include both of these: waking up and growing up, emptiness and form, nirvana and samsara, because both of them ultimately are not two or non-dual. And thus we both fulfill our dreams and awaken from them at the same time. And more than that, nobody can do.